Welcome in the midweek edition, Wednesday evening edition, MLB Live before lock. Awesemo family, we appreciate you hanging with us. Us, of course, is Neil, most importantly here. His brain, and we found out a couple of weeks ago, his beauty as well, stressing the pecs. The combination today to make you some money. I'm Eytan. Tyler is producing. Hit the thumbs up button, please, if you haven't already. And, of course, make sure you're subscribed. We'll tell you about a bunch of things going on, including Odd Shopper and the betting Discord. But, Neil, how are you, first and foremost, of course?
I'm doing well. I did the day slate for MLB2, which is not going so great for me so far because I did not full stack. It's the rare slate that I didn't full stack. I just did 4-man and 2-man secondary stacks. And then the Giants are going completely off and nobody else is doing anything. So it was the wrong slate to not full stack.
How often are you not full stacking out there?
Usually it has to be 5 games or fewer. I think I'm actually going to be full stacking today on this slate, but typically if it's 5 games or fewer, I'll consider going less than a 5-2 or at least 5-man stack.
Right, because I ask in the sense of we have 7 tonight, but the first 2 are FanDuel only. So we will hit those 5 games solo, if you will, on DraftKings. And maybe that's an opportunity. But based on recent lack of success earlier today, it doesn't sound like you're going to go back to that strategy tonight on the 5-game DK slate.
I don't think I think I'm going to be full stacking on DraftKings. It also, depends on the pitching on the slate and a lot of other factors. But I think on this one, I plan to be full stacking right now. We'll see. I'll have a little bit of time after the show to actually make my DraftKings lineup. So we'll see where I come down. But currently, I'm planning on 5-man stacking those.
Now, Guy will gamble, chest out Posse. But to be fair, Posse insinuates that it's me and Tyler, like you're leading the pack here. So it's really Neil. Like I'm not flexing anything I don't have. Tyler is, behind the scenes and stuff. So this is Neil's show here. We're not trying to steal anybody. If anything, the crew out there, like Guy Will Gamble, is part of the chest out posse led by Neil Orfield. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I mean, join it. I mean, I don't like things touching my neck. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So I'm always wearing V-necks. I'm always, a little bit of a cut down here. And it's just my style, because it's really just a comfort thing, but it's kind of becoming my style. So yeah, you should do it too. It's more comfortable. It's freeing.
Look, a lot of people don't know it, but they don't like things around their neck either. It's the easiest thing to suffer from, which is like, if it's a chain or if it's a tag or if it's clothing, to feel like there's something crawling on you. Right? Like, what's on me? What's on me? So it's annoying. Nobody wants anything except, your significant other touching you on the neck, or maybe other things on your neck. Like, I don't want anything else but that around my neck. So I'm with you, man. Yeah.
It's just, you got your Adam's apple there. It's kind of it's a vulnerable spot. Just it gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yes. An 8-game, that ain't happening here. If anybody, we've established, if either one of us is going to do the show shirtless, it's going to be Neil. He's got the pecs
for sure.
Do it. Nobody wants to see
Happy
me.
to.
No. All right, man. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. No better way to transition after that. All right. So as mentioned, we have these first 2 games on the FanDuel slate. Are you heavy to DK tonight? Are you looking at stacking a bunch at all on Fan? I know we're going to talk about these 2 games from a FanDuel standpoint, but just from a personal standpoint, from where you are you attacking a lot on FanDuel tonight?
Yep, I'm doing my 150 set, just my usual. I usually play 150 on both sets. I actually got a voucher for one more contest, so I'm doing 151 lineups on FanDuel today as well.
All right, nice. So let's start with Miami and Tampa. Put on the chat there. I like going over a first inning run, so we'll see if your analysis can agree here on this. Now, as far as the pitching matchup is concerned, you do have Rasmussen, who you're paying up, Poteet, who you're paying down. So I don't know if you're attacking either from a mound standpoint, really, to start things off.
Yeah, I mean, I have some interest in Drew Rasmussen for sure. Not as much in Cody Poteet. I guess he's cheap. That's the best thing you can really say about him. But the matchup isn't great against Tampa Bay. I don't have a ton of interest there. But Drew Rasmussen looks like a pretty solid play, coming in at 9.6% ownership on FanDuel. That's a reasonable number. Slight negative leverage there, 8.8% chance of being the best pitcher on the board. Rasmussen has a 22.4% strikeout rate. I guess they both. Cody Poteet also has a 22.4% strikeout rate. So maybe I shouldn't be writing him off so quickly. Maybe I could consider getting there as well. But just the underlying stats look really good. Drew Rasmussen, I guess I believe it a little bit more. 22.4% strikeout rate, 3.05 expected ERA, 0.91 WHIP. Those are all pretty solid numbers. So I do expect that I'm going to be ultimately getting to some Drew Rasmussen. I ran a set of 500 lineups, setting my cap at 24% on FanDuel just to kind of see what I would get. I didn't get to any Cody Poteet, so he's not projecting very well in the Awesemo tools. So I don't see myself getting there. The best thing I could say about Cody Poteet is there is a little bit of positive leverage. He's coming in at 1% projected ownership, 4.1% chance of being the top pitcher, 8.9% chance of being the top value pitcher. So if you land there, if you build out your stacks and they're expensive and all you have left over is 6,100, I guess he's a fine option, but not looking like something I'm going to be doing a ton today.
Now, if you look at just Tampa from a stack standpoint, there isn't a ton of leverage to be had by any means. They're not really projected. Granted, we have a couple of teams up there stacked high as far as the Angels and Braves, but dealing with negative leverage really from a different standpoint, but both negatively leveraged. The flip side of that, though, is just with Tampa, where you can attack Poteet for sure, but there just isn't that high of a top stack percentage score behind them. And in turn, based off their ownership, there really isn't much leverage you're gaining either. So it could be a good play, but you're dealing with a lot of the other field getting to it compared to where they are ranked.
All right, looks like I need to refresh because I had a lot of interest in Tampa. Yeah, it
Wait a
looks like
second. Hold on.
they're
Am I right or am I
no,
behind?
you're right. They have
Okay.
slight positive leverage, it looks like,
Yep.
in terms of top stacks. I do have some interest in Tampa just because I feel like they are always a pretty dangerous team. They're coming in at 5.1% projected ownership right now with a 5.7% chance to be in the top stack. So slight positive leverage there, but then also a 7.4% chance to be in the top value stack on the board. It's hard for me not to have at least a little bit of interest in Tampa today. I like both of these teams. Miami, I don't get to at all naturally. So I ran my 150 set. I got to like a few Miami stacks, which was kind of forced in, like just based on the way I ran my stacks. I was forcing it to give me some, and it gave me the bare minimum of what it could possibly give me, even with randomness on. I just did not get to Miami, but they look good in the tools, and I think I'm actually going to force them in a little bit. Drew Rasmussen, not exactly chalky coming in at 10%, but he's not unowned either. So a little bit of leverage there, and they just they look good. The projections look good enough. They're not great, but I definitely have some interest in Jorge Soler, Garrett Cooper, Jesus Aguilar. These guys all, I have some interest in them. So I think I'm going to be forcing in some Miami stacks and just based on the positive leverage as well. They're coming in at 1.1% projected ownership with a 3.1% chance of being the top stack on the board, 4.6% chance of being the top value stack on the board. It's hard for me not to have some interest there. So I think both of these teams, I'm going to try to come in just a little bit over the field.
Yeah, and it makes sense when you look at the numbers that you laid out there, especially with some positive leverage that you can gain to the field with Miami. All right, the other game, part of the 7-game slate on FanDuel's in Cincinnati, Cubs, Reds, and just looking, want to start here for the pitching matchup. Hendricks is going to be the most positively leveraged pitcher on the FanDuel slate. You also have on the flip side Luis Castillo, who is the most negatively leverage pitcher. So this is truly the polar opposite when it comes to leverage here, Neil. So you have an easy pathway if you just wanted to use the benefit of positive leverage with Hendricks. Granted, it's going to be the 8K that you're working with. Castillo is going to be cheaper, but just because he's negative 27.8 to our ownership projection doesn't mean that you can't work him in how you're basically building lineups.
Yeah, so Luis Castillo, when I built my first lineup of the day, I saw that 7,300 price tag on Luis Castillo against the Cubs, and naturally my first instinct was, hell yeah, sign me up for that. So he is in the first lineup that I built. He's a very talented pitcher, but the only problem with Luis Castillo is he's coming in at 37.4% projected ownership on FanDuel today, relative to a 9.6% chance of being the top pitcher on the board, 11.1% chance of being the top value pitcher on the board. So that is going to drive me away from Luis Castillo. I'm going to try to come well under the field. It didn't work out yesterday going against the massive ownership, but I think with Sonny Gray going completely off at 46% ownership. But as Michael Campbell in chat will tell you, it can work out sometimes to play some of these chalky guys. If you believe in them, you can go ahead and play them. Make sure you get a little bit different elsewhere if you do play these guys. So if you're playing Luis Castillo, I would not play him with the chalkiest stacks. My approach is going to be coming in under the field. I do think there is a lot of volatility there. So he has. I think that his strikeout rate is probably going to come up throughout the year. I think he's more talented than the 18.8% it has been so far this year. But I still think that it's a volatile spot. And if he's going to be coming in at 37.4% owned on a one pitcher site, that's just too much ownership, even for a pitcher of his caliber at that price tag. So I'm going to cut below the field on Luis Castillo. And then on the other side of it, Kyle Hendricks. So maybe I need to refresh here. He's coming. I'm seeing only 1% ownership on Kyle Hendricks. Okay.
7% leverage, 1% ownership.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to have some interest there as well. And I'll read you what I got in terms of just based on my early stacks as well. I did get to Luis Castillo, hit my max of 24% ownership on pitches today, which makes sense. He's going to project really well at 7,300. And then Kyle Hendricks, I currently have 4.4%. I don't know if I'm going to force myself to get more than that on Kyle Hendricks. He is coming at 1% ownership. So if that's what the projection is giving me, he has positive leverage. I would be coming in under his top 1% odds. So it might make sense to get higher than that 8% chance that he has of being a top one, just based on the leverage you have relative to the ownership. I usually don't force that kind of thing with pitchers unless it's like a major leverage spot. So I'll probably just take what I get, which looks like right now will be, 5 or 6% Kyle Hendricks, which I'm happy with that. It's a solid matchup against Cincinnati. He's a good pitcher, 8,000. So yeah, definitely some interest in both of these pitchers. Yeah, Kyle Hendricks' numbers don't look great so far this year, though. I got to say, 16.5% strikeout rate, 5.2 expected ERA, 1.33 WHIP. But in this matchup against the Reds, I still think that if the field's going to be at 1%, I think it makes sense to get a little bit above that.
You have a couple of guys mentioned Castillo there as far as the cheaper option, but the amount of ownership, projected ownership, is just ridiculous at over 37%. I mean, even Giolito just over 20%. But of the guys that are really in the top 4, top 5, Hendricks has a pretty decent top 1% score. So I think that if you're getting to what you say, 4 or 5% ownership there, that's still in pretty good shape here with the expectation of a guy who's got an 8% top 1% chance of being that top pitcher on the slate.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, his numbers don't look great so far this year, but still, you just look at how the sims turned out. He's looking good in the Awesemo sims. He's looking like he's being under-owned at 1%. So I think it does make sense to get to some Kyle Hendricks and Luis Castillo. He's too high owned, but I will say the Cubs, as Terry pointed out in his article today, the Cubs strike out at the highest rate in baseball of any team against righties, and he's usually a pretty good strikeout pitcher, even though he has not been so far this year. So plenty of reason to go to Luis Castillo if you believe in him. He's coming in too high owned, so he's on the other end of it from Kyle Hendricks in terms of leverage.
All right, last look at stacks here on the FanDuel only slate with these two, and Cubs are coming in with a pretty decent score here, especially from where you can gain some leverage, really right there at the top that I have for FanDuel. Just want to go through it. Yeah, 4.2%. And Cincinnati going against Kendricks, there is some ownership there, but the negative leverage score may be something that you'll either have to work around or simply a deterrent.
Yeah, I'll start with Cincinnati. I'm gonna probably go under the field there. I think that is gonna be a deterrent for me. You could work around it, try and build in some stacks from the bottom of the order, but I just think for me it's easy enough to get away on a 7-game slate on FanDuel. There are other spots I would rather go to. So if the field's gonna come in at 13% projected ownership against Kyle Hendricks, I mean, he's a major league pitcher. He's been around a while. He's a veteran. I don't think that they're likely to completely destroy him, or at least not. They don't have a 13% or greater chance of being the top stack on this slate against Kyle Hendricks. So I'm going to be undercutting the field. I will say they have a 14.3% chance of being the top value stack, so a little bit of positive leverage if you're looking at just from a value perspective. But I'm expecting to come in under the field on Cincinnati. Maybe I'll be 10 or 11%. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be completely Xing them out of my pool, because 13% is not crazy amount of ownership on a 7-game slate. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be undercutting the field a little bit on Cincinnati. And then, as you said, the Cubs on the other side going up against Luis Castillo, there's a lot to love there. So it's a high volatility spot. Luis Castillo, great pitcher, throws a lot of strikeouts. The Cubs are coming in at 3.2% projected ownership, though, with a 6.6% chance of being the top stack on the board, a 9.8% chance of being the top value stack on the board. So they do have the highest amount of positive leverage of any team on the slate. And there are sometimes I look at the top stacks tool and I think, this team is a team that is going to stand out to people as a team that I want to play. Like if the Dodgers are coming in with positive leverage, a lot of the times I'm like, I don't know if I totally buy into it. In this spot, though, I think that this is probably correct, that a lot of people are going to be avoiding playing the Cubs because they see Luis Castillo and they say, I want to play Luis Castillo. I mean, he's obviously the better side of this equation. So I really think that this is probably going to work out, that the Cubs are going to be really low owned, and it's a volatile spot. So I definitely want to get above the field on the Cubs here.
I know it's case by case. So in this particular case, this instance tonight, how much of you getting to Chicago, because I'm sure it's not even a one or the other. There's always going to be a pie chart of reasoning here, but why or how much of just flat out sheer ownership that Luis Castillo is getting is factoring in the appeal for Chicago, right? Because there could very well be scenarios, Neil, and you and I have talked about these, where you do have a heavily projected rostered pitcher, and that's not enough to get to a stack because you just don't like the stack individually.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that this is just a great leverage spot. And the stack, I mean, it looks good enough on FanDuel. It's relatively cheap. The most expensive batter in the whole order for the Cubs is 3,400 for Patrick Wisdom in the 6th spot. You've got Seiya Suzuki, who's on pace to probably be the Rookie of the Year, I think, at 3,100 in the 3 spot. Ian Happ in the 4 spot is just 3,300. Frank Schwindel 2,700 in the 5 spot. Rafael Ortega only 2,600, and he's in the two hole. So there's just so much to like about this Cubs team. The only thing that really scares you away is the matchup with Luis Castillo, but he has not been a pure ace so far this year. So I think that you can attack it. And I think that, I love the obvious leverage there of people just wanting to slam Castillo. There'll be people who jam in Castillo in every lineup because he does have the upside to break the slate. He does. He's 7,300. It's just a spot where if you decide to jam him into every lineup, you're going to be competing with a lot of the field there, and I'd rather get a little bit under on Castillo and take my shots on Cub stacks.
All right, let's now open up DraftKings here, and we can start in New York as the slate now whittles down by the 2 games. We're looking at the 5 games remaining here from DK. Still, I mean, this is all going to go back to FanDuel, but just a reminder that if we're talking about, if I'm asking, or if Neil leads with FanDuel or talks about it, it's incorporating those 2 games on the 7 game versus the 5 game that we have on DraftKings. So let's look at this from DK first. And if it's Sears, who's getting his first start, pitched in relief a couple times over, super low cost option at 5,500, but 0 opportunity to really gain any leverage. I mean, he is by a mile the most negatively leveraged score that we have projected for any pitcher on DK. And then you've got Tyler Wells on the flip side, who is also a pretty cheap option. So these are really P2s and how much you're getting to either, if not both.
Yeah, so I imagine I'm going to be getting into some Sears. I'm probably going to be coming in under the field. I think I'm probably going to force that to be the case. As you said, he's coming in at 39.9% projected ownership, and that is just too high for a pitcher that, I mean, really, the reason people are playing him is because of the matchup and the price. He's 5,500. He's playing against Baltimore. I get it. Those are, you like that. It's a great matchup, and that's a great price for Sears. He's making his first career start. We don't really know how many pitches he's going to throw. He does have a 22.2% strikeout rate so far this year, so that is pretty great, but a 5.47 expected ERA, that's not great. 1.5 whip, that's not great. So I don't think he's an incredible pitcher. I think that he's really just going to be owned because of the $5,500 price tag and the matchup with the Orioles. So if he's going to be 40% owned, it's an easy stay away spot for me. And when I say stay away, I don't mean full fade. It's an easy undercut the field spot for me. He's got a 16.7% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. This is a spot where, because he's so cheap, I care a little bit more about his odds of being a top 2 value, where he has a 35.3% chance of being a top 2 value. So not huge negative leverage there, but it's enough that I'm going to want to go under the field on JP Sears. Maybe I'll cap myself at 30% and, I'll take what I get at that point. Tyler Wells on the other side coming in at 12.5% projected ownership with a 12.3% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. So that is more neutral. And then 30.6% chance of being a top 2 value. That's a really nice number. That is positive leverage on Tyler Wells. And he's only 5,300, so he's even cheaper than JP Sears. Obviously, what you don't like about Tyler Wells is the matchup with the Yankees. That does scare me. I'm not going to go overboard with Tyler Wells. I don't want to have a ton of Tyler Wells, but his numbers are okay this year. His strikeout rate is low, 17% strikeout rate, but a 3.41 expected ERA, 1.19 WHIP. If he can get through 5 innings with 3 strikeouts, if he does enough to just outscore JP Sears, you're going to be you're going to do well. If the field does not play him at all and you get a little bit above the field, all you really need is for him to get to outperform Sears here, and there's really no other pitcher in their price range. So yeah, I'm going to be taking some shots on Tyler Wells today.
Yeah, and I think looking at it from the opposite end, normally if you're getting positive leverage on any Yankee stack, you kind of have to go there. I know there's a little concern about injury and how this lineup is going to shake out, but can you apply that line of thinking here where you're getting a decent positive leverage score for this Yankees stack against Wells tonight?
Yeah, so this is a spot where I have a little bit of trouble believing they're going to be this low owned, but if the ownership stays this low coming up to lock, I trust the tools, so I'm probably going to just trust in the tools and get above the field here. Yeah, they're coming in at 6% projected ownership currently, with an 8.7% chance to be in the top stack on the board, 11.7% chance to be in the top value stack on the board. So there is a lot to like about the Yankees today in this matchup with Tyler Wells. Usually in the past, I've always wanted to target the Baltimore bullpen. So when they've got a pitcher of Tyler Wells's caliber on the mound, I want to target them because I think, well, he's not that good, and then the bullpen's not that good. They actually have the, I think, third best ERA in MLB so far this year on Baltimore. So they're doing a lot better than they have been in the past. So maybe I need to start putting some respect on the Orioles bullpen there. But still, I think if the Yankees are coming in at 6% ownership, anytime the Yankees are that low, I'm going to have some interest. So yeah, sign me up for some Yankees stacks for sure. And then on the other side of it, I think Baltimore, I mean, we just talked about how over-owned JP Sears is going because of the matchup. Well, that I'm going to have some interest in Baltimore because he is making his first career start. We don't really know what he's capable of in this matchup. And, if other people are going to, in a high volatility spot, if other people are going to be betting on the pitcher, I'm going to bet on the other side of it. I'm going to want to stack up the Orioles. I'm definitely going to try to get well above the field. Currently 5.6% projected ownership for Baltimore tonight, 6.3% chance of being the top stack. So only moderate positive leverage there. It's not a ton of positive leverage, but also a 12.1% chance to be in the top value stack. And it's positive leverage on the opposing pitcher. So I definitely have a lot of interest in the Orioles stacks today.
I'm curious if you think the ownership may not spike as maybe normally projected here with the Yankees, simply because you don't have Stanton, you don't have LeMahieu. You've got a couple of guys, Gallo already out, right? You have a couple of guys now out, absent from tonight. I mean, look, from a betting standpoint, I jumped on the Yankees because of that, because you're getting good value with these guys being out. It's still the Orioles, it's still Tyler Wells. So I took him in an alternate. I laid the 1.5 there. But I wonder from a DFS standpoint if you think that's just going to continue to be a deterrent. And maybe even on a 5-game slate, people are finding other options to where, I guess the initial question is, it doesn't flood ownership towards the end as like we normally would see.
Yeah, no, I think that is a good point. That does make it more likely that the ownership stays low, that we're not going to have the usual Yankees lineup here that people love to play. So we'll see how the Yankees lineup ends up shaking out. It's really hard to judge before actually seeing who's in there. No pun intended. But yeah, once we see that lineup, my guess is I'm still going to want to come over the field on the Yankees.
I took him to home run, by the way. Got a decent number. So figured, nice. Look, just volume alone with all these guys out. All right, so let's move to Atlanta here. Phillies, Braves, and a reminder, of course, if you haven't already, you're hanging with us, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed. I mean, you see Jordan is in the chat doing extra work, clearing out the sex bots who have infiltrated here. Maybe we should cool it with like the pectoral talk, because now all of a sudden 3 straight weeks of talking about Neil's pecs has opened up some sort of gate on YouTube for the sex bots. I don't know if that's correlated or not. And maybe it's just coincidence.
They see how sexy we are and they want to come talk to us. This one's a little bit.
You keep saying we and us. You are the man that people are coming to see now.
No, it's both of us, Eytan. Give yourself some credit here.
All right, a little bit, but I'm not looking for any by any means. Phil's on the road against the Braves here. Ranger Suarez against Charlie Morton. So Phil's starting pitching has been pretty decent as far as a little stretch here. And if you we'll get to the stacks in a second, but staying on DK, if you're looking at Suarez, you've got some pretty good opportunity here, who is a guy that is getting some ownership, but is still coming up with some pretty positive leverage as well. And then, look, as far as Charlie Morton, there's always going to be a cost standpoint that's associated with it. Suarez, you're going to get even still at 7,900 on DK, so that's workable. Morton is always going to be up a little bit. He's at 9K, but both are still a little different between the two, Neil, but both are still positively leveraged.
Yeah, I'm going to have some interest in both of these pitches for sure. Ranger Suarez going up against Atlanta. So this is a high volatility spot because Atlanta is a very talented team. They could definitely knock him around, but and Ranger Suarez doesn't have an incredible strikeout rate so far this year. It's around 19%. Yeah, 19% strikeout rate so far this year. Not that great. Last year he struck out around 25% though. So I'm hoping that he can return to form, and based on the sims that we've run, it looks like we're thinking that maybe he has that possibility. He's projected for 11.2% ownership on DraftKings with a 22.3% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. So one of the better leverage spots on the day here. And I like to attack these high volatility spots from both sides usually. And this is definitely going to be a spot where I'm willing to go above the field on Ranger Suarez and just hope that that strikeout rate kind of returns to closer to where it was last year. And the Braves do strike out a good amount. I mean, they're a good team, but they also strike out a good amount. So it's if he does have that strikeout potential in him, this is a good spot for him.
There is some rain on the forecast here. It does look like it's coming down right now in Atlanta, but maybe by 7 o'clock, it's scattered down to like 50%. So there's a chance always when you have scattered thunderstorms of some sort of delay here. I don't know if the weather is impacting you at all or enough.
So far, not. It's something I'm going to have to monitor, I guess, closer to game time, especially with pitchers. I don't like playing pitchers in weather games because, the batters, if there is a delay, in-game delay, the batters are going to come back. The pitchers probably won't, maybe depending on how long it is, but typically the pitchers don't come back. So if we have concerns about an in-game delay, that's a spot where I might decide maybe it's not worth the risk. But it's a 5-game slate. I'm more inclined to take that kind of a risk on a short slate like this. And it's a monitor situation. We just don't really know what to expect at this point, but it looks like it's probably going to be fine.
All right. So, yeah, now you're right. And I was going to say if there was anything more with that, but really on both sides, Morton as well. Does that change at all with FanDuel? If you wanted to go back to, the bigger slate here, you're going to gain a little leverage with Charlie Morton. You're not gaining nearly as much with Ranger Suarez, and some of that I'm sure has to do with the price increase.
Yeah, so on FanDuel, I'm seeing 1% projected ownership on Suarez with a 7.8% chance of being the top pitcher. So some positive leverage there. Yeah, it might make me a little bit less inclined to go there on FanDuel just because of the you have more options. I mean, when you have 14 options instead of 10, you don't need to take on as much risk. So it's still going to be a monitor and wait and see kind of situation. But in a vacuum, I would want to play both of these guys. They both look good on FanDuel. Ranger Suarez, as I said, 1% projected ownership, 7.8% chance of being the top pitcher on the slate. That is one of the best leverage spots on FanDuel as well. And then Charlie Morton coming in with the fourth highest likelihood of being the top pitcher on the slate on FanDuel at 8,800. He has slight positive leverage, 8.9% top pitcher odds, and then only 7.5% ownership. So not huge positive leverage there, but enough that I would definitely have some interest going up against the Phillies here.
All right, let's look at the stacks here. Let's start with the road squad. You've got Bryce Harper, who's just on this tear. Doesn't matter what's wrong with him, so long as he can physically walk up to the plate, he seems to be able to dominate. Rhys Hoskins, really at the top, has been coming around as well. So this is definitely a workable stack. Now, as far as our projections are concerned and where we have projected leverage, the numbers are going to back it up. But just watching this team, they seem like a pretty good option against Morton tonight.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of interest in the Phillies tonight. They are the highest positive leverage spot. Yeah, they're the highest positive leverage spot on the slate, coming in at just 5.4% projected ownership with a 10.6% chance of being the top stack on the board. I definitely want to play some Bryce Harper, some Kyle Schwarber, target the lefties, but I'm going to mix in the righties as well. Hope that they get to Morton early, and at some point, the handedness doesn't matter if you can knock the pitcher out early. So yes, I prefer the left-handed batters for the Phillies, but honestly, I'm not going to be deterred from playing the righties as well. It's a great spot when the field is going to be going to Charlie Morton, which I guess they're not going to Charlie Morton a ton, so that's not a huge factor for me here. But they're not going to the Phillies either.
26%.
Yeah, I had FanDuel looking. Yeah, it's not nothing.
It's not nothing.
He has positive leverage. Yeah, I had the FanDuel. I was on the FanDuel tab, so I was seeing no ownership there. But yeah, 26% is one of the higher ownership spots on the slate. So there's a little bit of you can find a little bit of positive leverage going up against Charlie Morton stacks if the field is going to be there at 26%, and then just nobody is going to Philly stack. So hard for me not to love them in this matchup. yeah, the highest positive leverage spot on the slate. It's a spot that I would want to attack in maybe my first lineup, at least one of my first 5 lineups. I would probably want to have a Phillies stack in there.
Now, shout out to the chat here as Acuna has been scratched, so that's going to now factor in, I'm sure, to what you're looking at here with the Braves and where they are tonight. And I'm not quite positive, to be completely honest, with you all out there as far as if our projections have been fully updated with the Acuna news because it just came down. But knowing that in the back of your mind, how less appealing, if at all, is Atlanta to you? If it's the matchup against Suarez or just not having Acuna out there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have interest in Atlanta. I think that obviously Acuna is, it's a downgrade to their lineup when he's out, but it also means that you're probably going to be able to play them a little bit cheaper, and they're a dangerous stack top to bottom. So I'm still going to have some interest in playing full Atlanta stacks, even without Acuna. I'm going to have to monitor. My guess is that it drives down ownership a little bit, and also probably drives down top stack odds, but drives up top value stack odds. I don't know exactly how it's going to affect things, but currently, and I believe that this probably includes Acuna in the stack, but currently coming in at 10.4% projected ownership with a 13.6% chance of being the top stack on the board. My guess would be that it doesn't change things too much and that we maintain some positive leverage there. And the nice thing about Atlanta stacks is they really are dangerous from top to bottom. So I'm going to have some interest in playing Atlanta and probably playing a lot of different types of stacks with Atlanta here.
All right, let's move to Houston. We've got the Guardians in town for, well, yeah, that's actually, wait, let me just make sure, right? No, yes, into Houston. Sorry about that. Wanted to make sure I didn't skip Chicago. So let's look at Javier and Quantrill as far as any opportunity to get to either or both. And actually, I mean, is there anything that really changes with FanDuel on either of these stacks? Before we move on to the next game, sorry, to Cleveland and Houston.
Yeah, I think it's the same for me. I think that they both have. Let me find the FanDuel tab here, but I'm definitely going to have some interest still in the Phillies. They're coming in at only 3% projected ownership on FanDuel with a 7% chance of being the top stack on the board. So still one of the highest leverage spots on the board on FanDuel, a little bit behind the Cubs. But yeah, I think I might even have more interest in the Phillies than the Cubs. I don't know. It's a close spot. There's similar situations where they're going under owned because of the pitcher they're going against. And they're both fairly dangerous. I think that the Phillies are the more dangerous stack than the Cubs. So I think I might even on FanDuel, the Phillies might even be the first stack that I go to over the Cubs, even though the Cubs have slight better positive leverage. And then Atlanta, I really want to see what the numbers come in at with Acuna out of the lineup. My guess is, as I said, I think the top value odds come up and the top stack odds go down a little bit. But I think the ownership will go down. I don't know that for sure, just because they're just going to be that much easier to get to with cheaper bats, and we'll see who ends up leading off. So hard to kind of read without seeing the lineup, but I'm going to have some interest for sure.
All right, let's look then in Houston, and as mentioned, these two, as far as Quantrill, who's right there at the top alongside Ranger Suarez, with the similar leverage, except you have far less people getting to him in Quantrill than Suarez as far as projected ownership. Value is somewhat similar, and there's a decent gap between top two percentage between the two, but you're in that similar price range, 7,400 for Quantrill and then 79 for Suarez. So just in somebody that we just spoke about as far as in relation to maybe how much you're getting to Quantrill. But again, 2% ownership, maybe that's a workable number where you don't have to be super high and still be over the field.
Yeah, that's true. So Quantrill doesn't throw a lot of strikeouts. So that's the big deterrent for me is he only throws strikeouts at a 15.1% rate. He's also facing Houston, so I don't have as much interest in Quantrill. Just looking at my 500 lineups that I ran, I didn't get to a ton of. I think I had 6 Quantrill lineups in 500, and I guess I had 8 Quantrill lineups in 500. It's not something I'm going to be forcing in there. I don't think that he's a good enough pitcher to want to target him when he's going up against the Astros. So it's probably a full fade for me on Quantrill.
Hey, you're not losing much either with 2% there. Now, Christian Javier is 9,300. I assume that's the same on FanDuel across the board for Quantrill, especially with one less slot. So looking at Christian Javier, 9,300, there is a little bit of negative leverage, but as we've talked about with other guys who have similar or maybe even higher ownership projection, that doesn't mean that you can't come a little underneath and still work them favorably in your stack, or pardon me, with your stacks.
Yeah, I mean it's a 5 game slate, so on DraftKings I should say it's a 5 game slate. So there's just not that many pitchers with huge upside, which makes me have a little bit more interest in Christian Javier. 31.5% strikeout rate, 3.25 expected ERA, 1.02 whip on this slate. Those are elite numbers. So I do have some interest in Christian Javier. I might not even come in under the field despite the negative leverage, just because he is one of the few pitchers with really elite upside here. He's coming in at 28.9% projected ownership, 25.9% chance to be one of the top 2 pitchers. If I get a little bit above the field on Javier, I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, I think FanDuel, does that change much for you? I was just looking at him here. It's pretty similar across the board. There's a little cheaper option. You're not really I think you're gaining technically the score when you add those 2 games from a leverage, but you're also saving some money as opposed to what you're spending on DraftKings. So maybe a little more appealing on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think he might be. He's only 8,200 on FanDuel. Still a little bit of negative leverage, 9.9% projected ownership, 7.4% chance of being the top pitcher. But it's not huge negative leverage, and ultimately you're wanting to play pitchers that have upside here. So I'm probably going to be actually coming in above the field despite the negative leverage. I just want to have pitchers that have upside in my lineups, and I think Christian Javier has it. So yeah, I'm probably going to allow myself to come in above the field despite the negative leverage here.
So it's slim at not even a full point, the positive leverage score that we have for Cleveland, but maybe that combined with Christian Javier catching some ownership projection on DK, can you use any or either of that to your advantage in getting to Cleveland?
Yeah, I mean, I will have some Cleveland shares. They're coming in only 3.6% projected ownership with a 4.9% chance of being the top stack on the board. Hard not to have some interest there against a somewhat chalky Javier. So yeah, I think if I'm going above the field on Christian Javier, I'm still comfortable going to Cleveland stacks in my non-Javier lineups. I think that they're just coming in too low owned for a team that has some upside. Jose Ramirez seems to be doing it every night lately. So yeah, I'm going to be interested in playing some Cleveland lineups. I don't know how much exactly I'm going to be getting to, but I would guess I'm going to end up trying to come in above the field there just because of the positive leverage. Jose Ramirez looks pretty great here. He's one of the better projected players on the slate. Josh Naylor looks okay in the 5 spot. He's got the split. Yeah, I don't know who. There are not that many individual batters that I really love on Cleveland today outside of Jose Ramirez, but I still think the stack as a whole, I might try to play them more as full stacks than as one-offs here.
You're not getting any Quantrill full fade there. What about the opposite with Houston and their bats?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have some interest in Houston today.
Think, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to like Houston when they're coming in at fairly low ownership. I guess 9.9% ownership currently on FanDuel. That is a fairly neutral play. I just refreshed to make sure I'm still looking.
No, you're right. That's what I have too.
Yeah, so I definitely have some interest in Houston. I just think that they are a talented team. They're coming in at 9.9% projected ownership, 9.8% chance to be in the top stack on the board. Yeah, what can you say about Houston? They're top to bottom. They are a team that I like to have. I'm not afraid to play players in the wrong split either for Houston in this matchup against Quantrill. I think that they could knock him around early and just get to the bullpen, and handedness then won't matter. But Yordan Alvarez looks like one of the better plays on the slate, one of the top projected plays. He is 5,200, so pretty hefty price tag, but I'm still willing to go there. Jose Altuve coming in at nearly a 9 projection here. I'm getting to a lot of Houston as full stacks, and I'm actually getting to a lot of these bats as one-offs as well, it looks like.
Who do you think you're getting to in your projections? More DK here, Atlanta or Houston?
Houston, I'm going to get to more than Atlanta.
Okay. Just curious, because we did talk about Atlanta. They do have a little bit more. It's slight as far as the difference between the positive and negative leverage score, but both similar ownership, similar value
Yeah.
and super similar top stack percentage. That's why I was kind of curious between the two, which you were getting to more. Houston, clearly. All right.
And they're
Now,
both top to bottom, pretty good lineups. I think
right.
Houston, I kind of like the top six more so than the bottom. Doesn't interest me quite as much, but Mauricio Dubon actually looks pretty good at 2,100 just because of the price tag and the shortstop eligibility. Adds a little bit of interest there, but he is coming in at 13.2% projected ownership, so the field is getting there too. But yeah, mostly the top six is really what interests me on Houston.
Boston, Chicago. Now, this is another one that we're going to have to keep an eye on, it looks like, from a weather standpoint. But looking at it, at least with the pitchers, Giolito right up there with a lot of ownership on DK. Over half of the field is getting to Giolito. And then on the other side is Rich Hill, who 7,100 on DK, somewhat of a positive leverage score that maybe you could work against the field here. So either or both interest you tonight?
Yeah, I mean, Lucas Giolito is the ace on the mound today. He's, of any pitcher, he has the highest upside here. The ownership is there though, so he's coming in at 51.3% projected ownership, 37.9% chance of being a top two pitcher. I haven't decided if I'm going to. I think that I'm going to set my max cap for all pitchers today at 40%. There is some chance that I'm going to boost it up to 50% for Lucas Giolito, just because he's so clearly the most talented pitcher on the board today. The matchup isn't great. The Red Sox have been really good lately, so you don't love the matchup against the Red Sox, but the Red Sox have a 3.3 run implied total. So the expectation, according to Vegas, is that he will be able to limit the Red Sox. 34.6% strikeout rate. Incredible. 33.71 expected ERA, not quite as elite. 1.23 WHIP, not quite as elite. But the upside is there. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm probably going to cap myself at 40% Giolito just because of the matchup and maybe try to get to some Boston bats on the other side. But I'm still going to be getting to plenty of Giolito. My guess is that he will be my highest owned pitcher, or tied with some others. He's going to reach my cap for sure, just because the upside is immense today.
I'm sure it's going to be a similar answer, just probably not as extreme. But on FanDuel, you are getting significantly less projected ownership, because we already talked about Luis Castillo as the super cheap option on the slate. Now, granted, nobody's higher as far as a cost than Lucas Giolito, but at the same time, you're not dealing with over half of the field getting to him. In fact, where we have him projected on FanDuel is only about 21%. So less leverage to kind of negative leverage to kind of navigate around.
Yeah, less negative leverage to navigate around. I'm seeing, I think it was Butthole Jenkins just pointed out in chat that the weather is a concern. It didn't look that bad the last time I looked, but maybe it is a monitor spot. And if the weather does look like there's a significant chance of an in-game delay, it might make sense to fully fade both pitchers, just because Lucas Giolito is going to be so high owned that if 50% of the field does end up going there, and the weather knocks him out after the third or fourth inning, I mean, you could gain a lot on the field just by fading it. But yeah, man, if they late start it, I think I'd be maybe more likely to play him. I don't know. I'm going to have to be monitoring this game, because it is a spot where you can gain leverage on the field if it ends up raining out, or if it ends up an in-game delay and Giolito doesn't come back out. So I'm a little bit torn there, but it doesn't look like it's going to be that bad. So I think I'm planning on playing Giolito. I'm planning on playing it straight, but definitely something to monitor, because you could gain some leverage on the field if it ends up with an in-game delay.
Now, it could be could be the rare opportunity that Giolito implodes, what have you. But if Boston's stack works out, in whatever reasoning you can come up with, Neil, you're knocking out over 50% of the field with Giolito on DK.
Yeah, and that's I think that I'm going to be playing it straight, because I don't see any real reason to think that it's going to be rained out or an in-game delay. It doesn't look like it's the likeliest scenario, but on a 5-game slate with 50% of the field going there, it's just it's a spot where you could gain some on the field. So that makes me even more comfortable with my approach of just having 40% Giolito, and if it gets rained out, I'm still gaining some leverage on the field if the field is at 50%. So that's probably the approach that I'm going to stick to, unless the weather darkens closer to the time of lock.
White Sox are in a decent position here, especially for where we have them projected as a top stack on DK. So where's your interest level there with Chicago?
Yeah, so coming in at 9.5% projected ownership, 6.8% chance to be in the top stack on the board, just a little bit of negative leverage there on DraftKings. They were no, am I on the FanDuel slate?
Yeah, you're on
FanDuel.
FanDuel.
All right, I'm on the FanDuel. Yeah. Let me look at
No,
DraftKings.
wait a second. Wait a second. I think you're right. You said negative 0.5 with 9.6% projected ownership, right?
Yeah, so
You were
okay.
updated. I was not, and I misled you saying you were on FanDuel. Shame on me.
No, I think I was on the FanDuel site. It was just a little bit my tabs looked off. Anyway, yeah. So they look like a fairly neutral play currently on DraftKings,
Yep.
which I'm happy to see because they were the first stack that I built today was a full White Sox stack. I would like to play some White Sox bats against Rich Hill. They just have so many dangerous righties. 9.6% projected ownership for White Sox stacks with an 8.8% chance to be in the top stack on the board. So slight negative leverage there. Then a 10.2% chance to be in the top value stack on the board. I'm willing to get up to around where the field is, maybe even go above the field here. I just feel like Chicago is such a dangerous stack. You don't love the matchup with Rich Hill, but I feel like they have so many talented righties that I'm still willing to get there. And Rich Hill, 3.92 expected ERA, 1.27 WHIP. It's not like those are elite numbers, 18.3% strikeout rate. So yeah, I'm definitely willing to get to some White Sox here.
All right, Josh and Adam coming your way at 6:30. One more game for us. Final 5-6 minutes here before we get out of here. Josh, Adam, bringing, of course, the deeper dive. We have live before lock with Greg and Rinpack in the house following that. So you have a ton of NBA analysis coming your way in about 10 minutes. So let's shift. Last game on the slate here for us. Angels hosting the Rangers. We've got Glenn Otto and Reed Detmers as pitching options. So no, looking at it from DK first, and I'm sure if you're off one, you're going to be off both slates. So let's look at either or one of these guys as far as any fade opportunities here.
Yeah, I'm fading Glenn Otto. I'm not going to be getting to any Glenn Otto. I'm guessing, does he have positive? He probably has.
No. He's actually negatively leveraged. One of the worst the worst negative leverage score we have on DK.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at FanDuel. So I'm seeing it differently than you. So maybe I need to refresh here. I'm actually seeing positive leverage on Glenn Otto, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to be fading him either way.
Wait a second. I think you're right. I was looking at the Angels stack. See, we can't get it right. It's either you're on FanDuel or I'm on the stacks, not the pitcher. So, geez.
These
Tyler's right to shame us.
Yeah, these updates are helpful. They're including the pitchers now in the top stacks tool and vice versa. But
yes,
just trying to read it on a show, it throws me off a little bit. Being like, wait, where am I right now? They didn't used to have this, so I think it's throwing us off a little bit. So Glenn Otto has some positive leverage, but as I was saying, I'm still probably not going to get there. I currently in my crunch of 500, I didn't get to any. His numbers just don't merit playing him against the Angels. It's a tough matchup. He has a 16.7% strikeout rate, 6.81 expected ERA, 1.48 WHIP. I don't see a lot of reason to get to Glenn Otto here. Reed Detmers, on the other hand, I do think I will get to. The Rangers have just not been that great this year. They have a 3.8 run implied total. Detmers has a 17.9% strikeout rate this year. That's not that great. 4.19 ERA. That's not that great. 0.89 WHIP though. That's pretty great. So more of a matchup based thing, and he's also not getting a ton of ownership, coming in at 16.7% projected ownership, 18.2% chance of being a top two pitcher. So slight positive leverage there. I do expect to get to some Reed Detmers today. I don't think I'm going to be forcing him into a ton of lineups. I actually currently am coming in under the field on Reed Detmers despite the positive leverage. Maybe I'll try and get to a little bit more than the 6% that I have now, but he's not the best pitcher in the world. So if I lose a little bit of my Reed Detmers at the expense of some pitchers with a little bit more upside, I'm okay with that too.
All right, the final look at stacks then. 2 of the top 4 projected stacks tonight are in this game, with the Angels being right there at the top, Rangers being 4th, both having some negative leverage as far as the score attached to them, but on a 5-game slate, they kind of have to work LA in.
Yeah, I'm going to work in some LA. They are coming in way over-owned though. So I'm going to be under the field on LA, despite they are the top stack on the board. 16.4% chance to be in the top stack. That is the second best is Atlanta with a 13.7% chance. So LA has by kind of a good amount, the top odds of being the best stack on the board, but they're coming in at 22.6% projected ownership. That's just too high. Even against Glenado, I'm going to be going under the field on LA as my primary stack, and then I'm going to be spreading the ownership out to some of the other teams. So I like them. They're obviously a great stack today. It's a great matchup against Glenado. It's just the ownership is too high. This is baseball. I'm going to take some shots on some lower owned stacks instead of hand holding with the field if they actually do perform here. And then Texas, again, like you said, coming in with some negative leverage, 14.3% projected ownership, 10.6% chance to be in the top stack. They do have some positive leverage. If you look at the value stack column, they have a 16.9% chance of being the top value stack on the day. So, they're essentially a pretty neutral team. I'm probably going to be coming in a little bit under the field just because I don't think they have that great of odds of putting up 10 runs in this matchup. But I'm not going to full fade them either. They're going to allow me to get to a better secondary stack and better pitchers. So I'm going to be under the field on Texas, but probably still get to 10, 12%.
Yeah, and it makes sense, especially looking at where we have them projected. By all means, at Player Q DFS for Neil, at Shander Show for me. Thanks to Tyler for producing. Appreciate you all out there hanging with us. Again, hit that thumbs up button, please, if you haven't already, and really make sure you're subscribed here. Odd Shopper as well. We have constantly putting up new betting content each and every day across the board. Rasa's Sharp Play. And then, of course, you don't want to miss anything going on here, so you hit the notification bell. I think we wrapped it up, man, and in time here, so nobody can hold me technically accountable for pushing this thing further.
Yeah, let's send it along to the baseball guys. We just apparently the Yankees lineup just came in. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but Gallo's in, and I'm going to be playing some Joey Gallo.
Oh, look at that. See, yeah, and you can't hit Neil with that. Yeah, Hicks, Judge, Rizzo, Torres, Gallo's batting 6th, so there you have it. Nice. See, we even got that in at the end.
Yeah,
awesome. All right, appreciate everybody hanging with us. Enjoy the night. Good luck.
Good luck, guys.